Batten down the hatches and take the helm. It's time for adventure, seaside headlines, and a splash of mischief. Welcome to Marine Conservation Happy Hour, where coastal news meets pirate spirit, and every story comes with a twist. And now, your host, Dr. Scarlet Smash and Dr. Kraken McCracken.
This is the Marine Conservation Happy Hour. I'm Dr. Scarlet Smash, and this is Dr. Kraken, and we are your local Florida swashbucklers, bringing you Florida ocean and bay news topics, pirate stories, and shenanigans. Grab your drink and come on board. Well, we are starting to warm up just a little bit, Dr. Kraken. Gasparilla was definitely cold. We had a great episode talking about that last weekend. And this week, we're going to talk about the Knights of Santiago, or what we call in Tampa is Santiago Night Parade in Ybor, which is going to be Saturday, February 14th. That is Valentine's Day at 7 p.m. So I guess there's going to be a lot of Valentine's Day dates going to Ybor, having dinner and going to Ybor. But you know, this is really interesting history, Dr. Kraken. And I know this fancies you.
Oh, I absolutely love this because, you know, the Knights of St. James goes right back into the history, like, you know, kind of like the Knights of King Arthur, and they still exist today in Florida.
And, you know, let's set the scene, Dr. Kraken, because let's remind our listeners, and I have to be reminded all the time that, you know, Spain pretty much owned and ruled Florida for over 250 years. This was not like a brief thing in time. This was a long period. And we're talking about like from the 1500s to the 1700s. I mean, even the establishment of St. Augustine, which we all love, we love to going there, was established by Spain in 1565. So we're reeling everyone back again so they understand a lot of people here were from Spain. And a lot of people here were also from Cuba. There's a lot of Latin Americans, a lot of Latinos, and they brought a lot of their heritage here. And their heritage definitely was very religious, wasn't it, Dr. Kraken? And so that's where the name Santiago comes from. Santiago means Saint James.
Saint James, who was
in Spanish.
one of the disciples of Jesus. And apparently, you know, his body ended up on a boat, miraculously landing in Spain.
But he actually taught too. Did you not know that? He preached for Jesus in Spain for a bit. So he was beloved by Spaniards.
Oh yeah, he's like the saint for Spain. And they built this amazing cathedral for him.
After they found his sarcophagus.
After they found their sarcophagus, and the Santiago de Compostela. So this big cathedral, which became one of like the places
for pilgrimages.
The pilgrimages.
It was pilgrimages,
the Orlando. So back in the historical days, back in the Middle Ages, people would go on holiday by going to pilgrimages to cathedrals. And
what years are you talking about when you say the Middle Ages, Dr. Kraken?
Oh, I mean, this is like 1,000 years ago. So people will go on holiday to these pilgrimages to visit places and have fun and stay at inns, but also, you know, like have their sins forgiven. And maybe if they were sick, they would go and pray at the altar, and their illnesses would be cured and their wishes would be granted. So, you know, kind of like going to Disney in Orlando.
Oh, absolutely.
But people going on these pilgrimages, they often had lots of money with them and so on. Because, you know, holidays expensive. There were no banks back in those days, so you had to carry it with you. And they were attacked a lot by bandits. So they set up this group in about, I think it was about 1130, in the year about 1130, to basically protect these pilgrims that were traveling to the cathedral. And they set up the order of the Knights of St. James, or the Knights of
Oh,
Santiago.
wow. That's how it
bas-
happened.
they were basically kind of like cops that were protecting the tourists.
They were saint cops.
They were part priest or part monk and part knight. And they were warrior knights, and they would pledge to be chaste, to not marry, to be part of this warrior monk group. And there's a couple of other historical groups like this that, if you're a history nerd, you might have heard of the Templars, or if you read Dren Brown books or something like that, you might have heard of them.
Or what about if you're a Game of Thrones fan, and it would be like the Night's Watch?
The Night's Guard, yes. The Night's Watch, this order of knights, the King's Guard, that protect people.
That are going on the pilgrimage.
On the pilgrimages. And there were other ones in various different parts of Europe at the time. But the Knights of St. James and Knights of Santiago were specifically Spanish, although they ended up owning lands in like Portugal and Italy and Jerusalem. They went on the Crusades as well. So our crew of the Knights of Santiago are linked to this order, because the order continued, although it went from being like a group of warrior knights, attacking bandits and so on. They actually set up things like hospitals and hostels for the pilgrims, infirmaries to heal people. They had farms. They would have food for the peasants during the poor times and the famine times, and they feed them. So they actually had like this charitable mission that they had as well. And
well, I'm so into it because I think that I just read that they were on horseback. So it makes them even sexier.
Oh, absolutely. What the knights? The definition of a knight, you had to have a horse.
Yes.
And you had to have a sword, and you have to have a shield, really. That's what makes you a knight.
That's exciting.
They ended up going from having swords and protecting people to being more and more charitable, funding hospitals, funding hostels for poor people, providing arms, providing money for the homeless and the sick. So they sort of evolved throughout the years. One of the other groups was called the Knights Hospitaller, and that's where we get the name hospital from. They set up hospitals and hospices, and that's where we get that name from. So that order basically carried on, and we have an offshoot in Tampa.
This is all exciting. I love this history, Dr. Kraken. But before we jump into everything that's going on in Tampa and the offshoot of the Knights here, let's remember what was going on. We got to remember the fact that everyone in Spain was celebrating St. James Day because of all these pilgrimages. And actually, we found a map, Dr. Kraken, of the pilgrimages in Spain. And, I was not expecting, like when I thought of a pilgrimage, right? I'm thinking maybe people coming in from one end of the city, walking to the next part. But we're talking about like they're coming from South Spain all the way up to North Spain. They're walking for days.
Yeah, they're walking like the entire length of Portugal and then all of northern Spain to France. Very often, to get to the cathedral, they would walk the last 30 or 40 miles on their knees.
Oh, I know.
If they wanted to be extra penitent and they had lots of sins to get rid of, they'd crawl the last bit.
So my thought
cathedral
was, when you were talking about the Knights of Santiago, I'm thinking a small group, Dr. Kraken. I'm thinking almost like the Three Musketeers, you know what I mean? Like you have a very small group, but then when I see how long their pilgrimages are, they must have had thousands of knights, because that's
hundreds
hundred
of
thousands, hundreds of thousands.
700,000 knights in the 15th century.
Whoa.
And they owned huge amounts of land, because very often when people, when knights died, because they're very often wealthy, they would leave their goods to the knights, or other wealthy people died and they were perhaps a bit naughty in their lives and they wanted to make sure they got a place in heaven. They would leave their lands to the knights.
So you're telling me
of
these
St.
knights
James.
were very, very wealthy?
Incredibly wealthy.
Nice.
Incredibly wealthy. They were, almost billionaires in terms of how much land and how much money they owned. And like some of the other knights, they introduced this, rather than move money all around from like Spain to their place in Jerusalem to their place in Hungary, they wrote checks.
They what?
They had like a banking system. So you could take a check, you could take a little piece of paper in Spain, and then you could maybe travel to Jerusalem to do that pilgrimage.
We're talking about late 1400s.
Yeah. They have this
is
whole
like
banking system.
Middle Age. This is before the Renaissance.
Absolutely. And in fact, some of these knights' orders were so good at banking, like the English kings employed them to run the budgets and finances of England.
Oh, so these were not just meathead. These were very sophisticated, smart
they were
lads.
Imagine like a banker who also had a sword and who could fight, but who also could read, could probably read Greek,
the complete
Latin,
package.
could read the Bible. These were warrior monks. They also would have servants as well that were not monks, were like attached to their lands to do all the things, to like run the farms and things like that. But the guys in charge, they were like, I would say Renaissance men. They could fight, they could do theology, they could do math, they were diplomats, they were like outdoor survivalists helping people. They were tour guides. They could do lots of different
incredible
things.
So we're talking a long time. People were doing celebrations in Santiago, and that's kind of how everything started. Is people from Spain that lived here wanted to bring a little bit of their culture back, and they always had a festival or a feast for St. James, which totally ties into our celebration, Knights of Santiago parade here in Ybor. If you're loving our shenanigans, then stay tuned to after the break. We're coming back. And if that's not enough, find our podcast, the Marine Conservation Happy Hour.
All hands on deck, raise a glass, and ready the crew. Now, back to Marine Conservation Happy Hour. Bold, briny, and just a bit rebellious. Now, your hosts, Dr. Scarlet Smash and Dr. Kraken McCracken.
This is the Marine Conservation Happy Hour. I'm Dr. Scarlet Smash, and this is Dr. Kraken, and we are your local Florida swashbucklers, bringing you Florida ocean and bay news topics, pirate stories, and shenanigans. Grab your drink and come on board. All right, we're back, and we're going to continue talking about the Knights of Santiago, the parade that happens in Ybor, and how it came about here in Tampa. We mentioned that in Spain, they were celebrating, having big festivals, and right now it's more modern for St. James Day. And they have fireworks now. And we mentioned before that those who lived here in Florida, it was conquered by Spain at that time, were bringing back some of their culture, some of their festivities, some of their feasts, some of their celebrations. But let's go back again. You were talking about late 1400s. Like we said, Florida was still owned by Spain, and it was still owned by Spain until 1763. Then the British owned it for a little bit, not for long, maybe like 20 years.
The Brits it's just too hot and sweaty for the Brits, really.
They just couldn't handle it.
They just couldn't handle it.
They couldn't handle it. No. So then the Spain owned it again until the Revolution. And so, we're talking about all the way until 1821, Spain owned this. So a lot of the natives here in Florida were Spaniards, Cubans, Seminoles. And this is how it all happened. They wanted to bring some of their culture here in Tampa.
Absolutely. And well, in fact, Christopher Columbus, who sailed to the New World, his patrons, his bosses, the people who bankrolled him, ended up running the Order of St. James, the Knights of St. James. They got taken over by Queen Isabella and King Ferdinand. And so they were like, royal at the time of Columbus. So absolutely, a lot of the nobles would probably have been members of the Knights of St. James.
Oh, most definitely.
Back in the day. All the Richie Riches and some of the early explorers will probably been knights of this order. Although, as we said, eventually it started becoming more of a charitable organization, more of a honorary organization. So if you were noble, if you were rich, if you were involved in charities, then you became a member of the Knights. And then it became like an honor to become a Knight of St. James if you were, like a wealthy patron.
What's wild, Dr. Kraken, is we've been to Ybor so many times, and we've walked past the Columbia restaurant, and we've passed the historical plaque talking about the crew of Santiago, and never really thought anything of it, which is such a shame because we've walked past it a billion times. And there's so much history there. Okay, so the first chapter actually started in 1972. And when they first created their meeting, we're not sure if there was going to be enough people that would be interested in starting up their chapter.
Little did they know.
Little did they know. So they held their first formal meeting at Columbia Restaurant. And I don't know if you know, but Columbia Restaurant, remember I told you this is 1972. And Columbia Restaurant has been around, and it opened in 1903. So so it was there 70 years before the official meeting. And the rest
1972 is like 800 years after the Order of the Knights of St. James was founded.
And the Columbia Restaurant was founded by a Spanish and Cuban immigrant. Of course, that place is so yummy. Anyways, let's move on before I get hungry.
Yeah, I'm getting hungry now.
Okay, so this chapter of the Knights of Santiago was created, and it's now comprised of 250 individuals, professionals in the Tampa area, and it is comprised of all men, the knights. However, they do have
the ladies of the court, the ladies in waiting. They have the dames, les damas. They have the courtesans, the courtiers, and pages. And so there's quite a big, I guess, a court.
Yeah.
So there's although there's 250 knights, there's like a lot of people associated with them. And, I love their outfits.
Of course, because you would want to buy all the garb for it, for sure.
Well, quite frankly, I have the garb already. So, if you want to make me a knight, I have the gear. I actually have swords and chainmail and a shield. So I'm ready. I'm ready to be made a knight.
Okay, but are you going to preserve the enhancement of Tampa's rich Latin heritage and culture like the chapter does?
Well, I think the Latin heritage of Florida in general is just really
rich
important.
And beautiful. Yes.
It's one of the things that makes it unique.
I agree.
And I think that there are some fabulous things about the history and the traditions that should be maintained.
Well, the crew of the Knights of Santiago also have multiple functions. They have a coronation and a debutante ball in addition to their night parade, which is on February 14th.
I know, I was looking at pictures of the debutante ball, and I'm watching Bridgerton at the moment on Netflix. I thought, wow.
Oh my goodness.
This is like the closest to Bridgerton.
It looks like
Wouldn't
it's
that
a
be
high
cool?
demand. It really actually does. It looks like you have to register and maybe apply. I have no idea, but they have a whole thing about that. So I'm not sure, but it is for those that are between 18 and 25 years old.
Oh, so you
And
could do it, Smash.
oh, right. Exactly.
Totally.
Absolutely. So again, let's go back to what to expect on February 14th. It's a night parade. Please dress appropriately. We've learned from Gasparilla. That's correct. And it's going to have 100 floats. It's
Fabulous.
It's actually super fun. I've done it before. It's so much fun. It's a great vibe. And it's our way of celebrating Latin history. Now, you have a favorite float that's in the night parade.
Well, one of my favorite crews in Florida. I'm also actually a member of a crew in New Orleans as well. But my favorite one, I think, in Tampa is the Mystic crew of the Nautilus, because they have a submarine. They have a submarine with a bar on board and a giant squid down the side. And they do projects to help out with conservation of Tampa Bay. And, that is one of the crews I have a particular soft spot for. And so that's kind of the one I want to join. So if anyone who's a member of the crew is listening, just drop me a line.
That crew has 70 to 90 members right now. And they're diverse.
71 to 91 members now. Or 72 to 92 members.
Oh my goodness. Dr. Kraken wants to be on a cruise so badly.
Absolutely.
Can you tell? Please give him a call. Anyways, so that's pretty awesome, Dr. Kraken. I mean, I think I do believe that most floats usually have their own kind of bar, but this is an actual built-in bar that they have.
And you know what? They have 2 flushing toilets on the float. No porta potties.
Oh,
proper bathrooms.
Oh, now you've really sold me. Definitely have sold me. Okay, so do you know what kind of costume you would have to wear if you were on their crew?
Yeah, quite frankly, I pretty much have the costume already. It's kind of like
boots,
like a steampunky type
black
costume.
or white pants with a white collared shirt.
Do I have a white collared shirt? I think so. Do I look like I've just stepped out of Pride and Prejudice or Bridgerton? I think so. The ladies have to wear a golden dress. So
yes, they do.
You'd have to get a golden dress.
That would be a little bit hard for me to find, a golden dress.
But apparently if they make one, they will help you find one of these special golden dresses. So
okay.
I did see that. So don't
now
worry about
you're
it.
kind of getting me interested. I wish that we were part of this. I'm gonna go, but I will be in the crowd. I won't be in the actual parade. So if they're listening, maybe next year, right?
I have my Captain Nemo costume ready here with my pet squid. I'll be there.
Oh my goodness. I just love deep diving into the history of Tampa. I honestly do. This has just been so much fun. And who knows what we'll talk about next Saturday. So if you enjoy our shenanigans, don't forget you can also listen to us on our podcast. We can't wait to return next Saturday. See you then.